Daniel Mercer did not choke on the chicken, but he stopped chewing. Across the dinner table, his wife had just said something that did not belong in a normal suburban Thursday. Rebecca Mercer, 41, marketing director at a regional healthcare firm, lowered her fork slowly and looked straight at him. "Daniel, before you finish that bite, your name came up in an investigation today." The word investigation did not sound loud, but it landed heavy. Daniel's jaw froze mid-chew. For one long second, the only sound in the dining room was the soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant sports commentary bleeding in from the living room. Then something cold slid down the back of his spine. He swallowed. Carefully, too carefully. Their son Tyler, 16, glanced up from his phone, eyes narrowing slightly the way teenagers do when they sense adult tension they do not fully understand yet. Rebecca did not look angry. That was the first thing that felt wrong. She looked calm, measured, watching. Daniel set his fork down with a controlled precision. The small metal tap against the plate sounded sharper than it should have. What kind of investigation? His voice came out even. Practiced. Under the table, his left hand had already curled tight against his thigh. Rebecca held his gaze. Internal audit. 2 words. Soft, clinical, dangerous. Daniel felt his heartbeat kick once hard against his ribs. Audits happen all the time. The response came fast, too fast. Rebecca noticed. Of course she noticed. Her fingers folded neatly together on the tablecloth. This one is centered on missing inventory. There it was. The second drop. Daniel felt heat creep slowly up the back of his neck. The house was cool. The vents were running. Everything about the room said comfortable suburban evening. His body did not agree. Tyler's phone lowered fully to the table now. Missing. Teen voice, quiet, alert. Rebecca still had not looked away from Daniel. She did not give details, but she sounded very sure something was wrong. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair, forcing his shoulders to loosen even though his chest had started tightening. Warehouse systems have been messy since the new rollout. Everyone is dealing with it. Rebecca's head tilted just slightly. Everyone. She repeated the word like she was testing its weight. Daniel knew the mistake the second it left his mouth, because Rebecca leaned forward a fraction. If it is everyone, why did they only mention you? The room went still, not loud, not explosive, just tight. Tyler shifted in his seat, eyes moving carefully between his parents now. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck once, rougher than he intended. People love attaching names to rumors. Rebecca's expression did not harden. That was what made the pressure worse. Instead, her voice softened just slightly. "Daniel, you have been different the last few weeks." There it was. The emotional turn, not accusation, observation. Daniel's jaw tightened before he could stop it. "Work has been heavy." Rebecca nodded slowly. "I know." Her eyes stayed locked on his. But heavy work does not usually make someone wake up at 2 a.m, checking their phone. The air shifted. Daniel felt it physically this time. A small drop in his stomach. A thin line of heat along his collar. "You have been watching me sleep now." The edge slipped into his voice before he could smooth it out. Tyler's shoulders stiffened. Rebecca did not react to the tone. "I have been worried." The word landed softer than anything else she had said. And somehow it cut deeper than the word audit. Because worry meant she had been paying attention longer than he realized. Daniel suddenly became aware of something uncomfortable. His fingers were clenched under the table. His shoulders were too tight, and his son was now watching him very carefully. The polished version of himself he usually kept intact at home was starting to show hairline cracks. Rebecca's voice came gently but directly. "Are you in trouble?" The question sat in the middle of the table between the plates and half-finished dinner. Clean, simple, dangerous. Daniel held her gaze. For a moment, he said nothing. Inside his chest, something ugly and uncertain shifted. Because the truth was not clean, not completely innocent, not completely guilty either. And the worst part was, he had not decided yet which version of the story his family was about to hear. Daniel did not answer right away. That was the first thing Rebecca noticed. In the past, he was quick, clean, direct, the kind of man who hated loose ends in conversation. Tonight, the silence stretched. Not long, but long enough. Tyler shifted in his chair, the legs scraping softly against the hardwood. He looked down at his plate, then back at his father, clearly unsure whether this was normal adult tension or something worse. Daniel finally reached for his water glass. Slow movement. Too deliberate. The ice clinked softly. "I am not in trouble." The words came out steady, but his throat felt tight when he swallowed. Rebecca watched him carefully, not accusing, not backing off either. Just gathering information the way she always did when something did not add up. "Then help me understand." Her voice stayed calm, reasonable, dangerously patient. Daniel leaned back in his chair, forcing his shoulders to drop even though the muscles along his neck were still tight. "It is a system issue. The new inventory software has been throwing flags all month." Corporate knows. Rebecca's fingers tapped once lightly against the table. A small sound. Measured. Your supervisor's wife did not sound like this was routine. There it was again. The quiet pressure tightening one notch further. Daniel felt irritation flicker low in his chest now. Not explosive. Just sharp enough to make his jaw set. Supervisors' wives are not exactly primary sources. Tyler let out a small breath that almost sounded like a nervous laugh, then quickly stopped when neither parent reacted. Rebecca's eyes did not leave Daniel. She leaned forward slightly, elbows near the edge of the table. "She sounded worried about you, not the department." "You?" That landed differently. Daniel felt something in his stomach dip again, slower this time, because that part was not entirely wrong. He rubbed the back of his neck once more, rough, distracted. "Look, there was a discrepancy. We are reviewing it. That is literally the whole situation." Rebecca studied his face, long enough that the air in the room started to feel thick again. Daniel became very aware of the way Tyler was watching him now. Not like a kid half listening, fully alert. That bothered him more than he expected. He exhaled through his nose. Why is this suddenly an interrogation at dinner? The edge in his voice was sharper than he intended. Rebecca did not flinch. "Because you have been off." Simple, direct, and uncomfortably accurate. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a split second, something unguarded crossed his face. Rebecca saw it. Tyler saw it too. Daniel caught himself and leaned forward, reaching for his fork again even though he was no longer hungry. "I am tired. That is what you are seeing." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Maybe." But then she added quietly, "Tired does not usually make someone jump every time their phone buzzes." Daniel's grip on the fork tightened before he could stop it. A small thing, but visible. Tyler's eyes dropped immediately to his father's hand. The room cooled another degree. Daniel set the fork back down. Carefully this time. "You are reading into things that are not there." Rebecca's voice softened again, and somehow that made the pressure worse. "Then tell me what is there." Silence. Longer this time. From the living room, the sports broadcast cut to commercial, and the sudden burst of louder audio made Tyler flinch slightly before the volume dropped again. Daniel leaned back slowly. His chest felt tight. Not panic, not yet, but the early warning signs were there. Rebecca watched him the way she used to watch Tyler when he was younger and trying badly to hide something. Daniel hated that look, because part of him knew he had earned it. Tyler finally spoke, voice quieter now. "Dad, did something actually happen at work?" Daniel turned to him. For half a second, the defensive answer sat right on his tongue, but it did not come out clean. Instead, what slipped through carried more weight than he intended. There was a reporting issue. Rebecca's eyes sharpened slightly. Small shift, big impact. What kind of reporting issue? Daniel hesitated. Too long. Enough for both of them to notice. Then he said carefully, "Numbers did not line up the way they should have." The words hung in the air. Rebecca's posture straightened almost imperceptibly. Tyler went completely still. And for the first time that night, Daniel felt something uncomfortable settle low in his chest. Because the conversation was no longer circling the problem. It had just stepped directly into it. The words "numbers did not line up" sat in the air longer than Daniel expected. Rebecca did not react right away. That was what made his chest tighten. She did not jump to conclusions, did not raise her voice, did not accuse. She simply watched him, and the longer she watched, the more exposed Daniel felt. Tyler leaned forward slightly, elbows hovering near the edge of the table. "What does that mean?" Teen voice. Careful now, not curious anymore, concerned. Daniel dragged a slow breath through his nose. He could feel the back of his neck warming again, that familiar pressure building under his skin. "It means the system flagged a mismatch." Rebecca's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Flagged how? Daniel hated that question. Not because it was unfair, because it was precise. He shifted in his chair, the movement small but restless. Inventory counts versus shipping logs. It happens. Rebecca did not nod this time. She stayed very still. "Does it usually follow you home at 2 in the morning?" There it was again, that quiet knife. Daniel felt irritation spike before he could stop it. "You keep bringing that up." Tyler's gaze flicked between them quickly. Rebecca's voice remained even. "Because you keep avoiding it." The room cooled another degree. Daniel's jaw tightened. For a brief second, something less controlled flickered across his face. Not anger exactly, not fear either, pressure, pure and simple. He reached for his water again, but stopped halfway, fingers hovering above the glass. Rebecca noticed. She always noticed the small hesitations. Daniel forced his hand back to the table. "There is a review process. I am part of it. That is all." Rebecca leaned back slightly in her chair, studying him from a different angle now. "And you are not worried." The question was soft, too soft. Daniel held her gaze. "I did not say that." Tyler blinked. That was the first honest crack of the night. Small, but real. Rebecca caught it immediately. Her voice dropped just a little. "So you are worried." Daniel exhaled slowly, the sound heavier than he intended. Anyone would be if their department is under review. Rebecca's fingers tapped once against the tablecloth again. Measured. Thinking. Then she asked the question that made Daniel's stomach sink another inch. "Did you sign off on the numbers?" The air in Daniel's lungs stalled. Not visibly, but inside everything tightened. Because now they were no longer talking in generalities. Now they were getting close to the line that actually mattered. He rubbed the back of his neck again, slower this time. "I approved standard reports. Like I always do." Rebecca's eyes did not soften. "Standard reports that now do not match." Daniel felt the first real flicker of heat rise behind his ribs. This is how audits work. They check everything. That does not mean someone did something wrong. Tyler spoke quietly. But sometimes it does. The words were not accusing, just honest. And somehow, that landed harder than anything Rebecca had said. Daniel looked at his son, really looked. Tyler was not a little kid anymore. He was watching, thinking, putting pieces together. Daniel suddenly felt very tired, the kind of tired that sat behind the eyes and made everything feel heavier than it should. Rebecca's voice came again, softer now but more focused. "Daniel, is there anything about the situation you have not told me?" The question hung there, clean, careful, dangerous. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. For a long second, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the refrigerator and Tyler's slow breathing across the table. Because the truth was sitting right there, half-formed, half-buried. And Daniel had just realized something that made the pressure in his chest tighten another notch. If he said the wrong thing next, dinner was not going to be the only thing that fell apart tonight. Daniel did not answer. Not because he did not hear Rebecca's question, because he heard it too clearly. The words, "Anything about this situation you have not told me," stayed in his head, repeating in a slow, heavy loop. Tyler shifted in his chair again, the movement small but restless. His eyes kept moving between his parents like he was trying to read a game he did not fully understand. Rebecca did not rush him. She sat back slightly, hands folded loosely on the table, posture calm but fully alert. Waiting. Daniel hated being waited out. He dragged a slow breath through his nose and finally spoke. "There is nothing hidden." The sentence came out controlled, but not clean. Rebecca's eyes sharpened almost immediately, because she heard it, the slight drag in his voice, the missing confidence. Daniel saw the moment land on her face and irritation flickered low in his chest. "You are making this bigger than it is." Rebecca shook her head once, slow. "No." Her voice stayed soft. "I think you are trying to make it smaller." The words slid across the table and settled there, heavy. Tyler went completely still. Daniel felt heat rise behind his ribs now. Not panic, not yet, but pressure was building. He leaned forward slightly, palms pressing flat against the edge of the table. "You want details? Fine. There was a shipment that did not reconcile cleanly. We flagged it. It is under review. That is literally how the process works." Rebecca did not interrupt. That almost made it worse. Daniel continued, voice tightening a fraction. "No one has accused me of anything." Rebecca tilted her head slightly. "Not yet." The two words landed clean and sharp. Daniel's fingers curled against the wood before he could stop them. Tyler noticed. Of course he did. The room felt smaller now. The overhead light suddenly too bright, too focused on the center of the table. Daniel forced his hands to relax. "You are jumping ahead of facts." Rebecca leaned forward just a little. "Then help me catch up to the facts." Her tone never rose, never pushed, just steady pressure. Daniel exhaled harder this time. "Fine." He dragged a hand briefly across his mouth, a rare unpolished gesture. There was a discrepancy in one of the quarterly transfers. It routed through my approval chain. Compliance flagged it. "We are reviewing the documentation." Rebecca's brows pulled together. "Transfers." Daniel nodded once. "Inventory movement between regional warehouses." Tyler frowned slightly. So, like boxes, went missing. Daniel hesitated. Too long. Rebecca saw it. Tyler saw it too. Daniel corrected quickly. Not missing, misreported. Rebecca's fingers tapped once against the table again. measured. And if it is misreported, someone entered it wrong. Daniel's jaw tightened. Possibly. The word came out slower this time. Rebecca leaned back again, studying him in silence. Daniel could feel the moment stretching thin, too thin. He suddenly reached for his water and this time actually took a drink. The glass touched his lower lip for a fraction too long. Rebecca spoke quietly. "Daniel." He looked up. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were no longer just concerned. Now they were focused. Very focused. Did anyone else sign off on it, or just you? There it was, the center line. Daniel felt his stomach drop, because this was the part he had hoped the conversation would not reach tonight. He set the glass down slowly. "My name is on the final approval." Tyler's eyes widened slightly. Rebecca did not move, but the air in the room shifted. "Subtle, but real," Daniel quickly added. "That does not mean I caused the discrepancy." Rebecca nodded once. "I understand that." But her next words came softer. "It does mean your name is the one people will say first." The truth of that landed hard in Daniel's chest. For the first time that evening, his composure cracked more visibly. He leaned back in his chair and dragged both hands briefly down his face. "Rough, tired, human. I know how it looks." The admission came out lower than anything he'd said all night. Tyler swallowed quietly across the table. Rebecca watched Daniel very carefully now. Not attacking, not backing off, just seeing him. And that somehow made the tightness in Daniel's chest worse, because the truth was no longer abstract. It was sitting right there in the middle of the dinner table between half-finished plates and cooling food. Rebecca's voice came again, quieter now. "Has anyone from compliance contacted you directly?" Daniel hesitated. One beat too long. Then he answered. They scheduled a meeting for Monday morning. The room went very still. Tyler's shoulders slowly stiffened. Rebecca's eyes held Daniel's face. And in that silence, something unspoken finally settled between all three of them. This was no longer just workplace noise. Something real had started moving, and none of them knew yet how big it was going to get. Monday morning. The words stayed in the air like a quiet warning. Rebecca did not speak right away. She just looked at Daniel, her expression no longer just concerned. Now there was calculation behind her eyes. Careful, measured, trying to understand how far the situation might spread into their lives. Tyler broke the silence first. "Is that bad?" His voice was low now, no teenage casual tone left. Daniel leaned back slowly in his chair. The wood creaked under his weight, a small sound that felt too loud in the tight dining room. "It is standard procedure." The answer came automatically, but the confidence behind it had thinned. Rebecca noticed. Of course she did. Standard does not usually make you look like this. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Like what?" Rebecca did not soften the response. "Like you are already bracing for impact." The words landed clean. For a second, irritation flared sharp in Daniel's chest, not because she was wrong, because she was too close. He dragged a hand across the back of his neck again, slower this time. "You are reading stress as guilt." Rebecca shook her head slightly. "No," her voice stayed quiet. "I am reading stress as stress." Then she added, more gently, "But I need to know what kind." The room settled into another long pause. From the kitchen, the refrigerator motor kicked on with a low hum. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly down the street, tires whispering against pavement. Normal suburban sounds. Nothing about the night outside suggested anything was wrong. Inside the dining room, everything felt tight. Daniel exhaled slowly through his nose. Compliance flagged 3 transfers last week. Rebecca's posture straightened a fraction. 3. Daniel nodded once. All routed through my approval cue. Tyler's eyes flicked quickly toward his father. That sounds not great. Daniel's mouth pressed into a thin line. It sounds worse than it is. Rebecca did not interrupt this time. She let him continue. Daniel leaned forward slightly, elbows near the table, but not quite touching it. A rare break in his usual controlled posture. The system upgrade caused reporting delays between warehouses, numbers posted out of sequence. That is what triggered the flags. Rebecca's fingers rested still now. No more tapping. Listening mode, and compliance believes that. Daniel hesitated, a small pause, but not small enough, they're reviewing. Rebecca's gaze sharpened, meaning they are not convinced yet. Daniel did not answer immediately. That silence said enough. Tyler shifted again, shoulders tight. Dad. Daniel looked at him. Tyler's voice dropped. Are they looking at you or everyone? There it was. The question Daniel had been quietly hoping would not come from his son. He inhaled slowly. Right now, my reports are part of the review. Tyler swallowed. Rebecca's eyes did not leave Daniel's face. Part of the review is not the same as routine anymore. Daniel's fingers curled briefly against the edge of the table. Pressure was building again. You are jumping ahead of the facts. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. Then walk me through the facts. Her voice stayed calm, but the space for vague answers was closing. Daniel stared down at his plate for a moment. The roasted chicken had gone cold, the vegetables untouched, the normal rhythm of dinner completely gone. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its earlier polish. The first discrepancy showed up 2 weeks ago. Rebecca did not move. I flagged it and sent it back for warehouse verification. Tyler listened closely now. And then Daniel's jaw tightened. 2 more showed up in the next reporting cycle. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly, clustered. Daniel gave a short nod. Yes. The word came out quieter this time. The room cooled another degree. Rebecca asked carefully, "And your name is the final approval on all 3? Daniel looked up at her. For the first time that night, the answer took visible effort. Yes. The truth sat heavily between them. Tyler leaned back slowly in his chair, the movement stiff. Rebecca held Daniel's gaze, not accusing, not panicking, but no longer just worried either. Now she was fully alert. Daniel suddenly became very aware of something uncomfortable rising in his chest. Not fear, exactly. Not yet. But the clear understanding that whatever was coming on Monday morning, it was not going to stay contained at the office. No one reached for their food anymore. The plates sat there cooling under the overhead light, untouched, like the dinner had quietly stopped being the point. Daniel leaned back in his chair, but his body did not relax. His shoulders stayed tight, and the faint line between his brows had deepened without him noticing. Rebecca noticed. She always noticed the small tells. Her voice came softer now, but more focused than before. When were you going to tell me? The question was not sharp. That made it worse. Daniel looked up slowly. Tell you what? Rebecca did not blink. That your name was sitting at the center of a compliance review. Tyler shifted beside them, the chair legs scraping lightly against the floor. The sound made Daniel's jaw tighten. It is not the center. The correction came too quickly. Rebecca's head tilted just slightly. Then where is it? Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a brief second, something unguarded crossed his face. Not panic, not guilt, pressure. He exhaled through his nose. It is one piece of a larger review. Rebecca held his gaze. But it is your peace. Daniel felt the truth of that settle heavily in his chest. He rubbed his palms slowly against his jeans under the table, grounding himself. I did not hide it. Rebecca's expression shifted. Not accusing, just quietly unconvinced. You also did not mention it. The words landed clean. Tyler looked between them again, the tension now obvious even to him. Daniel leaned forward slightly, elbows finally touching the edge of the table. I was waiting for facts, Rebecca asked gently, or waiting to see if it went away. The question hit closer than Daniel liked. A flicker of irritation rose in his chest. This is exactly why I did not want to bring it up early. Rebecca did not react to the edge in his tone. Because you thought I would overreact. Daniel hesitated. Too long, Rebecca saw it. Tyler saw it too. The silence stretched. Daniel finally exhaled, heavier this time. I thought it might resolve internally. Rebecca's fingers pressed lightly together on the table. And if it does not, there was no accusation in the question, just quiet realism. Daniel's throat felt dry. Then we deal with it, Tyler spoke softly. Deal with what exactly? Daniel turned to him. For a moment, the polished father voice almost came back. Almost. Compliance reviews can lead to process corrections. Rebecca's eyes stayed on him, and sometimes she left the sentence open. Daniel finished it anyway. And sometimes they lead to disciplinary action. The words landed heavier than anything said so far. Tyler went completely still. Rebecca's posture straightened slightly. Daniel immediately added more firmly, "But no one has accused me of wrongdoing." Rebecca nodded once. "I hear that." But her voice lowered just a fraction. "You also have not said you are completely in the clear." That one slipped past Daniel's defenses. For the first time that night, he looked away first. Just for a second. But it was enough. The refrigerator hummed in the background. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and then fell quiet again. Normal sounds. Uncomfortable silence. Daniel leaned back slowly, rubbing a hand down his face in a tired, unfiltered motion. I do not know what they are going to conclude yet. There it was, the most honest thing he had said all night. Rebecca watched him carefully. Tyler swallowed. And in the quiet space of the dining room, the shape of Monday morning started to feel a lot more real. The word conclude lingered in the air long after Daniel said it. Rebecca did not move right away. That stillness had become its own kind of pressure. Tyler finally shifted back in his chair, the movement slow, careful, like he did not want to accidentally make things worse. "So what happens Monday?" His voice was quiet now, no teenage edge, just uncertainty. Daniel rested his forearms on the table and stared down at the grain of the wood for a moment before answering. Compliance walks through the flagged reports. Rebecca's eyes stayed on him. And Daniel exhaled slowly. And they asked questions. Tyler swallowed. "About you?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded once. "Possibly." The room cooled another degree. Rebecca leaned forward slightly, elbows now resting lightly on the table, mirroring Daniel without seeming to notice she was doing it. "Have they pulled your access yet?" The Keegan came out calm, professional, too informed. Daniel looked up sharply. "No." Rebecca held his gaze. "But they could." Daniel did not answer right away. That silence said more than a yes would have. Tyler's shoulders stiffened. "Dad." Daniel dragged a hand slowly across the back of his neck again, the motion rough with tension. "This is normal review protocol." Rebecca's voice stayed even. "Then answer me something clearly." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What?" Her eyes did not soften. "If they walk into that meeting Monday morning, what are they most likely to question first?" The precision of the question landed like a weight. Daniel looked away briefly, then back. The transfer timing. Rebecca did not blink. Explain. He exhaled slowly. The shipments between the Midwest and Southwest warehouses posted out of sequence. Tyler frowned slightly. Meaning. Daniel rubbed his thumb against the edge of the table. Meaning the receiving logs showed inventory before the shipping logs cleared. Rebecca's expression sharpened. That sounds messy. It is messy, Daniel admitted quietly. Tyler leaned forward a little. But messy is not the same as wrong, right? Daniel looked at his son. For a second, something softer crossed his face. No, then he added more carefully. But it is the kind of thing compliance looks at very closely. Rebecca's fingers tapped once against the table again. Measured. And your name is on the final approval for those sequences. Daniel's shoulders tightened. Yes. The word came out lower now. Rebecca leaned back slowly in her chair, processing. The shift in her posture made Daniel's chest feel heavier. Because she was no longer just reacting, she was mapping the situation. That was always when Rebecca was most dangerous in an argument. She spoke again, voice thoughtful. Walk me through Monday morning. Daniel blinked once. What? Rebecca's tone stayed calm. When you sit down in that room, what is the first question they're going to ask you? The air in Daniel's lungs stalled. He'd already been thinking about that, over and over. At 2 in the morning, at 4, during his drive home. He rubbed his jaw slowly. They're going to ask why the approvals cleared without a manual hold. Tyler's eyes widened slightly. Manual hold? Daniel nodded once. For irregular sequences. Rebecca's gaze sharpened. And why did they clear? Daniel hesitated. Just one beat too long. Because the system did not flag them until after posting. Rebecca went very still. That was the first answer tonight that did not sound fully solid. Daniel saw it land. He pushed forward quickly, which is exactly what the review is verifying. Rebecca did not interrupt, but the silence that followed felt different. More focused, more alert, Tyler spoke quietly. Dad, are you worried they think you missed something? Daniel looked at him. For a moment, the honest answer hovered right at the surface. He chose carefully. I am worried they're going to look very closely at everything. Rebecca's eyes stayed locked on his. And sometimes, looking closely is when people decide where the blame lands. The sentence was quiet, not accusatory, just true. Daniel felt the weight of that settle heavily in his chest, because Monday morning was no longer just a meeting on his calendar. It was starting to look a lot more like a line he was about to be forced to stand behind. Rebecca's last sentence did not fade. It stayed in the room like a low hum. Sometimes, looking closely is when people decide where the blame lands. Daniel leaned back slowly in his chair, but his shoulders remained tight. He could feel the familiar pressure building behind his ribs, the kind that had been creeping up on him for days now. He had hoped dinner would feel normal tonight. That hope was gone. Tyler broke the silence first. So, what do you say in there? His voice was careful. Daniel looked at him. For a moment, he almost gave the polished answer. The clean corporate version he'd used in dozens of meetings over the years. But something in his chest felt too tired for that. You tell the truth. The words came out quieter than he intended. Rebecca's eyes flickered slightly. The truth about what? Daniel exhaled slowly. About the sequence timing. About the system delays. About the approvals moving through standard queue. Rebecca tilted her head just a fraction. Standard queue. Daniel nodded. Yes, but the word did not land as solid as he wanted. Rebecca caught it immediately. Her voice stayed calm. Daniel. Were those transfers reviewed manually before you approved them? There it was, the question he had been hoping she would not ask tonight. His fingers curled briefly against the edge of the table. They went through the normal automated checks. Rebecca did not move. That is not what I asked. The room tightened again. Tyler's eyes moved between them, fully alert now. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck slowly. The manual hold threshold was not triggered at the time of posting. Rebecca leaned forward slightly, meaning you did not manually stop them. Daniel's jaw tightened. Correct. The word came out flat, honest, uncomfortable. Tyler shifted in his chair. Is that bad? Daniel dragged a breath through his nose. Not automatically. But he did not say it with the same confidence as before. Rebecca's fingers pressed lightly together on the table. Walk me through your decision. Her tone was not accusing, just precise. Daniel stared down at the table for a moment before answering. The volumes looked consistent with seasonal movement. The timing lag was within system tolerance. Nothing in the initial pass suggested escalation. Rebecca listened carefully. No interruptions. Then she asked quietly, "And now?" Daniel looked up. Her eyes were steady. "Does it still look routine to you?" The question landed square in his chest. He held her gaze for a long second. Too long. Because the honest answer was already sitting there between them. His voice dropped. Not entirely. Tyler went very still. Rebecca did not react outwardly, but something behind her eyes sharpened. Daniel leaned back slowly, rubbing both hands down his face in a rare, unfiltered motion. I did what the process called for. Rebecca's voice softened slightly. I believe you followed the process. Then she added carefully, I am trying to understand if the process is what they are questioning. That hit closer than Daniel expected. He stared at the table again, the weight in his chest settling deeper. Because this was the part that had been bothering him at 2 a.m, not the numbers themselves, the timing, the sequence, the way the flags had appeared after the approvals were already locked. Tyler spoke quietly. Dad, do you think someone else messed up before it got to you? Daniel's eyes lifted slowly. For the first time that night, uncertainty showed clearly across his face. I do not know yet. The admission hung heavy in the room, and for the first time since dinner started, the problem in front of them stopped feeling like a simple work issue. It was starting to feel like something much harder to predict. The words, I do not know yet, did not leave the room. They settled into the space between the three of them and stayed there, heavy and uncomfortable. Rebecca leaned back slowly in her chair, but her eyes never left Daniel's face. She was not panicking, not spiraling. She was thinking. That was what made Daniel's chest tighten another notch. Tyler rubbed his palms against his jeans, a nervous habit he probably did not even realize he had. So someone else could have caused it. His voice carried a careful hope. Daniel hesitated. Possibly. The answer came measured, not reassuring. Rebecca caught that immediately. Possibly is not the same as likely. Daniel exhaled through his nose, the sound heavier than he intended. Because right now, we do not have full sequence visibility. Rebecca's brows pulled together slightly. Explain that to me in plain English. Daniel nodded once, tired. The warehouse logs, the transfer system, and the approval queue do not update in perfect real time. There is lag, sometimes minutes, sometimes longer. Tyler frowned. So, the numbers can look wrong even if they are not. Daniel gave a small nod. Yes. Then he added more carefully. But compliance looks at patterns, not just snapshots. Rebecca's gaze sharpened at that. Patterns. Daniel leaned forward slightly, forearms resting on the table again. If delays cluster in a way that looks inconsistent with normal flow, they start asking why. Tyler swallowed. And that is what happened here. Daniel's jaw tightened. That is what they are reviewing. Rebecca tapped her fingers once against the table. Measured. Thinking. Then she asked quietly, "Has anything like this ever happened in your department before?" Daniel opened his mouth, paused, closed it again. Rebecca saw the hesitation immediately. "Daniel." He exhaled slowly. "Not at this scale." The honesty in that answer shifted the room. Tyler leaned back slightly, eyes wider now. Rebecca's posture straightened almost imperceptibly. What changed? The question came soft, but it landed hard. Daniel stared at the table for a long moment before answering. "The new routing software went live 6 weeks ago." Rebecca nodded slowly. "And since then?" Daniel rubbed his thumb against the edge of the table again. "We have seen more timing noise than usual." Tyler spoke quietly. "Noise does not usually trigger compliance meetings." Daniel looked at him. For a second, something like reluctant respect flickered across his face. "No." Rebecca leaned forward slightly. Then what made this one different? The room went very still. Daniel's chest felt tight again. Because this was the part that had been circling in the back of his mind for days. The part he had not said out loud yet. He spoke carefully. The volume threshold. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Daniel dragged a slow breath in. The flagged transfers were larger than normal seasonal adjustments. Tyler blinked. How much larger? Daniel hesitated, then answered. Enough to trigger a manual review. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything earlier in the night. Rebecca's fingers stilled completely on the table. "And those still cleared through your approval?" Daniel's shoulders tightened. "Yes." The word came out low. Tyler's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Dad?" Daniel looked at him. Tyler's face had lost its earlier curiosity. Now it held something else. Uneasy concern. "Do you think they are looking for someone to blame?" The question hung in the air. Daniel did not answer right away, because the honest answer was uncomfortable. Not guaranteed, but not impossible either. He finally spoke, voice quieter than before. "Compliance always looks for root cause." Rebecca's gaze stayed locked on his, and sometimes root cause becomes a person. Daniel did not argue. He could not. Because deep down, under all the process language and system explanations, he knew exactly why Monday morning was sitting so heavily in his chest. If the numbers told the wrong story, someone's name was going to carry it. And right now, his name was sitting in a very dangerous place on that list. No one spoke for several seconds after that. The quiet in the dining room no longer felt like normal family silence. It felt loaded, like the air itself was waiting for something else to drop. Daniel sat very still in his chair, but inside his chest the pressure had started to build in slow, heavy waves. He could feel it behind his ribs, in the tight line of his shoulders, in the faint tension along his jaw that he could not quite release. Rebecca was still watching him, not accusing, not panicked, just seeing more than he was comfortable with. Tyler finally broke the silence. "So, what do you do now?" Daniel dragged a slow breath through his nose. "I show up Monday morning and walk them through the sequence." His voice sounded steady again, but the effort behind it was starting to show in the small movements of his hands. Rebecca tilted her head slightly, and if they are not satisfied with the sequence, Daniel's fingers curled briefly against the edge of the table. Then they dig deeper. The answer came out before he could soften it. Tyler shifted in his chair. How deep? Daniel hesitated. That pause did not go unnoticed. Rebecca's voice came quieter. "Daniel." He looked up. Her eyes were calm but very focused now. "How exposed are you in this review?" The question landed square in the center of his chest. For the first time that evening, Daniel did not try to answer immediately. Because the honest version was not clean, he rubbed the back of his neck slowly, buying himself a second. "My name is on the final approvals." Rebecca did not move. "You already said that." Daniel exhaled. "But approvals do not exist in isolation. There are upstream validations, warehouse confirmations, system checks." Rebecca's gaze stayed steady, "and if those upstream pieces hold." Daniel's throat felt tight. "Then the approvals look routine." Tyler leaned forward slightly. "And if they do not?" Daniel's eyes flicked briefly toward him. "Then the approvals get more attention." The careful phrasing did not hide the meaning. Rebecca's fingers pressed lightly together on the table. More attention from compliance usually leads where? Daniel's jaw tightened. To expanded review. Rebecca did not blink, and expanded review sometimes leads where? The pressure in Daniel's chest spiked to formal findings. Tyler went very still. Rebecca's voice lowered just a fraction. "And formal findings sometimes lead where?" Daniel looked away first this time. "Disciplinary action." The words landed heavier than anything said so far. The refrigerator hummed in the background. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed, and then everything went quiet again. Inside the dining room, the temperature seemed to drop another degree. Tyler swallowed hard. "Are you saying you could lose your job?" Daniel looked back at him quickly. "I did not say that." But the denial did not carry the same weight as before. Rebecca noticed. Her voice stayed calm. "What outcome are you preparing yourself for?" Daniel leaned back slowly in his chair. For the first time that night he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the long workday. "I am preparing to answer questions." Rebecca held his gaze. "That is not what I asked." The words were gentle, but they cut clean. Daniel exhaled slowly, longer this time. "I am preparing for them to look very closely at my decision trail." Tyler's shoulders stiffened. Rebecca asked carefully, "Do you believe your decision trail will hold?" The room went very still. Daniel stared at the table for a long moment before answering. "Most of it will." The second the words left his mouth, he knew both of them heard what was missing. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. "Most." Daniel rubbed his face once, rough and unfiltered. "There are timing gaps I do not like." Honesty. Finally. Tyler leaned forward, voice tight. "Gaps how?" Daniel's jaw worked once before he answered. The system posted the receiving confirmations faster than expected. The manual hold window never triggered. By the time the lag surfaced, the approvals were already locked. Rebecca listened without interrupting. But her next question came very quietly. "And if someone asks why you did not manually pause the sequence anyway?" Daniel felt the pressure spike again, because that was exactly the question he had been hearing in his own head at 2 a.m. He answered carefully, because based on the data visible at the time, there was no clear escalation trigger. Rebecca held his gaze. "But now there is." Daniel did not respond. He did not need to. The silence answered for him. Tyler leaned back slowly, processing. Rebecca's voice softened, but the focus behind it did not fade. "Daniel, is there any chance someone upstream pushed those transfers through faster than normal?" The question landed differently. Daniel's eyes lifted slowly. For the first time that night, something sharper moved behind them. "I have been wondering that." The admission changed the air in the room. Rebecca's posture straightened slightly. Tyler blinked. "You think someone else touched it?" Daniel shook his head once. not touched. Then he corrected himself quietly. But the timing does not feel clean. Silence followed. Heavy. Because now the problem had shifted shape. It was no longer just about whether Daniel had missed something. Now there was a second possibility sitting on the table. Someone else in the chain. And none of them yet knew which direction Monday morning was going to point. The sentence, "the timing does not feel clean," did not fade. It changed the entire direction of the room. Rebecca leaned back slowly, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Not in suspicion of Daniel this time, but in focus, in calculation. Tyler looked between them, confusion mixing with a new kind of tension. You mean someone else could be involved? Daniel did not answer right away. He stared down at the table, thumb rubbing slowly along the edge of the wood. The movement was absent-minded but tight. Possible. The word came out low. Rebecca caught the hesitation. Possible is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Daniel let out a slow breath. Because I do not have proof yet. The honesty landed heavier than anything else. Tyler leaned forward a little. But something feels off. Daniel nodded once. Yes. Rebecca folded her hands together on the table. Walk me through what feels wrong. Her voice was calm again, but sharper now, engaged. Daniel straightened slightly in his chair, shifting into the analytical part of his brain. The one he trusted at work. The one that usually kept him ahead of problems. The receiving confirmations posted faster than the physical scan windows usually allow. Rebecca's brows pulled together. Meaning. Daniel spoke carefully. Meaning, inventory was marked as received in the system before the normal processing delay should have cleared. Tyler frowned. Like someone hit fast forward. Daniel glanced at him. Something like that. Rebecca's fingers tapped once, slow. Could that still be system lag? Daniel shook his head slightly. Lag usually goes the other direction. Slower, not faster. The distinction settled heavily between them. Rebecca leaned forward. So either the system behaved differently, or someone upstream changed the timing. Daniel held her gaze. Yes, the word came out firmer this time. Tyler's voice dropped. Do you think they know that? Daniel exhaled slowly. Compliance will see the same sequence trail I am seeing. Rebecca did not blink. And what story does that trail tell? Daniel's jaw tightened. Right now. He paused, choosing the words carefully. Right now, it tells a story where my approvals cleared after an unusual sequence. Tyler sank back slightly in his chair. Rebecca's voice stayed quiet. Not a story where someone else is clearly responsible. Daniel shook his head once, not without deeper pull logs. Silence stretched again. The refrigerator hummed softly behind them. Rebecca's gaze stayed steady. Have you requested the deeper logs yet? Daniel hesitated. That pause was small, but it was enough. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. Daniel. He exhaled through his nose. Not formally. Tyler blinked. Why not? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck again, slower this time. Because once you request deep audit pulls, it escalates visibility. Rebecca leaned back slightly. Meaning it puts a brighter spotlight on the entire chain. Tyler frowned. But if something weird actually happened, would that not help you? Daniel looked at him. For a long second he did not answer, because the truth was uncomfortable. Yes, he said finally, but it also locks me into the review lane. Rebecca studied him carefully. You are already in the review lane. The quiet truth of that landed square in Daniel's chest. He knew it. She knew it. Tyler was starting to understand it. Daniel leaned back slowly, both hands resting flat on the table now. I wanted to walk into Monday with clean context first. Rebecca's voice softened slightly. And now. Daniel's jaw worked once. Now, I am not sure clean context is going to be enough. The admission hung heavy in the room. Tyler swallowed. Rebecca watched Daniel very closely. Not judging, not pushing, just seeing the full weight of the situation settling onto his shoulders. Then she asked the question Daniel had been quietly avoiding in his own head for the last 48 hours. If Monday goes sideways? Her voice stayed calm. How fast does this become bigger than a routine review? Daniel did not answer immediately, because the honest answer was the one he'd been trying not to think about. He finally spoke, voice lower than before. Faster than I would like. The room went still. And for the first time since dinner started, the problem no longer felt like something that might resolve quietly. It was starting to feel like something already in motion. No one reached for their plates. The food had gone cold a long time ago, but none of them seemed to notice anymore. Rebecca studied Daniel across the table, her expression no longer just concerned. Now there was something steadier there, focused, grounded. Tyler sat unusually still, shoulders tight, eyes moving between them like he was trying to understand where the real danger was. Daniel finally pushed his chair back an inch. The movement broke the silence. I am not walking into Monday blind." His voice came out quieter than before, but firmer. Rebecca tilted her head slightly. "Tell me what that means." Daniel leaned forward again, elbows resting on the table this time without trying to hide the tension in his posture. "It means I am pulling the sequence logs first thing tomorrow morning." Tyler blinked. "You can do that." Daniel gave a short nod. "At my access level, yes." Rebecca's gaze sharpened. "You just said earlier that pulling deep logs increases visibility." Daniel did not look away. "It does." The admission sat heavy between them. Rebecca's voice softened. "Then why now?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Because walking into that room, guessing, is worse." The honesty in that answer shifted something in the air. Tyler leaned forward slightly. "What exactly are you looking for?" Daniel's thumb traced slowly along the edge of the table again, but this time the movement felt more deliberate. Focused. Timestamp irregularities. Manual overrides. Anything that shows the sequence moved outside normal tolerance. Rebecca watched him carefully. "And if you find something," Daniel held her gaze, "then Monday becomes a very different conversation." Silence stretched, not empty this time. Charged. Tyler spoke quietly. "And if you do not find anything." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "Then I answer for what is in front of me." The weight of that settled heavily across the table. Rebecca leaned back slowly, studying him in a way that felt different from earlier. Less probing, more assessing. Daniel noticed. "What?" Her voice came calm. "You sound different." Daniel frowned slightly. "Different how?" Rebecca folded her hands together loosely. Less defensive, more decided. The observation landed deeper than she probably intended. Daniel leaned back slowly in his chair. "Because the worst part is not the audit." Rebecca's eyes stayed on him. "Then what is?" Daniel's voice dropped. "Walking in unprepared." That was the first sentence all night that carried clean certainty. Tyler exhaled quietly, almost like some of the tightness in his shoulders had eased. Rebecca nodded once. "That makes sense." The room settled into a quieter kind of tension now, not the sharp uncertainty from earlier. Something more focused. Rebecca spoke again, gently but directly. "Daniel, I need to ask you something clearly." He looked at her. Her eyes did not waver. "Did you knowingly approve anything that did not feel right at the time?" The question landed clean. Final. Daniel did not answer immediately. He stared at the table for a long moment. Tyler held very still. Rebecca waited. Finally, Daniel shook his head. No. The word came out steady. At the time, everything visible in the queue looked within tolerance. Rebecca held his gaze another second. Then she nodded slowly. I believe you. The tension in Daniel's shoulders loosened a fraction for the first time all night. Small, but real. Tyler let out a breath he probably did not realize he had been holding. Daniel rubbed a hand down his face, exhaustion finally showing through the edges of his composure. Monday is going to be a long day. Rebecca gave a small nod. Yes. But her voice stayed calm. You are not walking into it blind anymore. Daniel looked at her. Something quieter moved through his chest now. Not relief exactly, but not the same tight pressure from earlier either. Tyler pushed his plate forward slightly, appetite clearly gone. So, what happens after Monday? Daniel leaned back slowly. If the logs support the timing issue, compliance widens the scope upstream. Rebecca nodded. And if they do not? Daniel met her eyes. Then I answer whatever they put in front of me. No sugarcoating, no corporate polish. Just the truth. The room sat with that for a moment. Rebecca finally reached forward and lightly touched the edge of Daniel's hand on the table. Not dramatic, not emotional, just steady. Whatever happens, we deal with it when it happens. The simple certainty in her voice settled something inside Daniel that had been wound tight all evening. He gave a small nod. Tyler looked between them, still uneasy but calmer than before. Dinner felt officially over. Daniel stood slowly from the table, the chair sliding back with a soft scrape. I'm going to review the logs tonight. Rebecca did not argue. Tyler watched him carefully. As Daniel turned toward the hallway, the weight of Monday morning still sat firmly on his shoulders. But it no longer felt shapeless. Now it had edges. Questions. Next steps. And somewhere, deep in his gut, one quiet realization kept repeating. If the timing really was not clean, Monday was not going to be the end of this story. It was only going to be the moment everything finally came into the light. If this story made you pause for a second, you are exactly who this channel is for. Real pressure, real consequences, real moments people never see coming. If you enjoy slow burn stories where one quiet decision changes everything, take 1 second to subscribe to Final Text. And tell me in the comments, was Daniel just unlucky? Or did he miss something he should have caught? Your take might be sharper than you think. I read more of your comments than you realize. See you in the next story.